And welcome to tonight's conversation between two icons of contemporary dance, Kyle Abraham and Bebe Miller. This event comes just one day after the premiere of Kyle's latest commission, Dear Lord, Make Me Beautiful, here at the Park Avenue Armory. A grand meditation on life's transitions, this piece blends an original live score by yMusic with a curvilinear LED set by Sao Yu Shi, also known as James, and it highlights Kyle's remarkable ability to interweave nature, humanity, and technology in his choreography. Kyle Abraham has been on an extraordinary creative journey over the past 5 years in works like Cassette Volume 1, which premiered in Hamburg earlier this year, and Mercurial Sun, commissioned by the American Ballet Theatre. He's continued to challenge and expand the possibilities of dance. The current show, Dear Lord, Make Me Beautiful, runs until the 14th of December. In conversation with Kyle is Bebe Miller, a trailblazer whose career has defined collaborative and improvisational approaches in dance. Her recent premiere, Tether, created alongside Angie Hauser and Daryl Jones, and performed at the Baryshnikov Art Center, explores the intricacies of human relationships. Looking ahead, her new work, Indifferent Forest, set to premiere in 2025 at Harlem Stage, draws inspiration from ecosystems to examine interdependence. Both artists are known for their deep engagement with storytelling and their ability to make the personal palpable. Their works are rich in theme and innovation, whether engaging with identity, community, or the wider environment. Tonight's conversation will offer a rare glimpse into the minds and hearts of two friends who are also some of the most important voices in contemporary dance today as they discuss their creative process, their latest works, and their commitment to their shared art form. By the way, I'm Tavi Nyong'o. I'm the curator of the public program here at the Armory, and I'll be moderating the Q&A after their conversation. When I think about Dear Lord, Make Me Beautiful, I think about what it takes to create joy when the world tries to bury it. That's not just joy, it's genius. It's survival. It's a refusal to let anyone define our existence solely through struggle. Black joy says, we are not just what's been done to us. We are what we make. We are what we dream, and we are what we love. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Kyle Abraham and Bebe Miller.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hello. Was there? Well, okay.
Yeah, here we go. You had an opening question for us.
You had an opening question.
Tavia.
You promised
Where's
us.
that question?
I mean, because
Tavia?
here we sit until there is one.
Oh, that is the question now? Or,
Okay.
I don't even know. We can start there. We can start wherever you'd like. Either of you would like.
I want to come back. I want to come to yesterday, or maybe like, say, 4 months from before yesterday. Where would that take us?
Sure.
Where you were making a decision on some level about this. So what have you been thinking about 4 months ago?
Well, yeah. Around 4 months ago was a time we were here. We had a wonderful opportunity to have a technical residency in the space, and during that time, it was a good space for us to be asking questions about how all of the different collaborative elements could work together. This was the first time that James, who did the projections, was working with us in the same space as Dan Scully, my lighting and scenic designer, and Karen Young, who did the costume design. So in that space, we were able to really think about how each thing could be in conversation with the next, and how we could think about really where the work needed to go from that point. I didn't want to really be but so finished. when we got to that moment, because I wanted to make space to be reactionary to what James was bringing to us in real time. Yes.
Hi. Yeah. So, okay. And that's an interesting thing about not being quite finished dance-wise, but being at a point where there's enough flex or possibility based on what happens with your collaborators. And this maybe is a question for the dancers, so you'll have to just stand in for them.
Yeah.
But just how do they absorb that almost place, having kind of also absorbed a real kinetic, full-bodied something about where they are, and they are kind of blessed with a whole nother several elements just to look at and work with. So I'm just curious, like, do they tell you about it, or what's the conversation about that?
I think a lot of that conversation happens in the after. I think it's reflecting on what the experience has been up until a certain point, prior to us getting back into the theater. You want to have that space to think about, okay, what was that experience like for you, and how can we make it better, or richer, deeper for the next time? So knowing that we were in tech in late May, early June, and coming back into it a week before this performance, it gave us an opportunity to really think about how everyone can feel supported and how we can dive into the work in different ways. I think a lot of it also has to do with Risa Steinberg, who works with me as an editing advisor in the choreographic process, working with me and the dancers on different ways to connect to the themes in the work. So it allowed me a space to kind of think of different meditations that I wanted to bring forth to the dancers, different sources of direction to bring to them. And I think, when we were here for that technical residency, we were having some cast changes at that time. Some newer dancers were coming into the company. Some new dancers were joining this cast from outside of my usual working group. And so trying to make them feel as acclimated as they could in a short period of time didn't necessarily leave space at that time to get into, what is your intention? How old are you when you're doing this movement? How long did you know the dancer that you're relating to prior to 2 minutes prior in this piece or something like that?
Right. And I love just that idea of the conversation of relationship that there was a moment in the work last night, that one of my favorite moments, and it's such a simple one, but where for those, spoiler.
Oh, don't say the ending.
Sorry.
You on the ending?
No, not that one.
Okay.
But there was such a responsive herd, basically, of the dancers, like waving across the space, and you were sort of in the middle, but then they swept you up and they kind of moved around and blah blah blah. But their understanding of each other was on some peripheral level, and I love that sense of, like, they don't have to look, but they are just in tune with something that's been set in motion, and this happens probably like 2/3 of the way through the piece, so that we get to see that development and just kind of get an understanding about how a group might know each other. Yeah, and whether it's a group of people or a group of trees or
poppies, all the things. Yeah, we refer to that as the movement exploration is drunken dust. Yes, it's drunken dust. But it's also, it can manifest as ideas of being particles in space, or being trees, or being some particle floating around. I'm curious, how many people have seen the show? I know it's tricky because last night was just gala night. Okay,
Okay.
cool. Just for reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, no more spoilers. I mean, yeah.
Saving a lot. There's lots to save. Yeah.
Well, it's another spoiler. Do your best. But something about how the process of a work developing its like kind of kinetic language, because it seems to me, I mean, from the opening, which I won't talk about too much, but it's just really fun, cool, and into solo, into group, and then a real very particular change of the kinetics of the body that happens, I don't know, 20 minutes in or something. There's like a, oh, whoa, there's a folding or a pushing. And so how those things develop in their timeline is really just kind of what the choreography is. And like, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Trying to think of how I want to go into it.
Okay.
I think part of it is I think an idea of discovery, right? I think as we think about our own aging process, there's maybe an unintentional freedom that we're experiencing when we're little folks, and those, up to 10 years old, up to like 7 years old. But then there's these shifts that start happening, right? Like maybe your body starts changing. Maybe people react to you differently than they did before. Maybe you're seeing a loved one pass away. Maybe you're seeing a parent or a grandparent or an elderly person fall and see how delicate it is for them to stand in a way that it may not be for you. And so you start questioning all of that. So that real life exploration is part of the shift that I'm curious about in this work. It's I don't think it's a spoiler to say, maybe it's informing you that like the what I'm interested in when you see the first dancers enter stage beyond myself is a bit of utopia for a period of time, but there is a moment that starts to shift. So I try to create a space in that relative place where we can think about, I jokingly refer to the dancers sometimes, dance like you have no student loans. What is that freedom?
Whoa.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but what is it like to move or to just be present and hold space in a way where you feel so free? And so I'm curious about that, but then I'm curious about the acknowledgement of knowing that you have something that other people may not have. And that freedom has weight. And so all of that is part of, a part of the journey that I'm interested in.
There was a very particular small moment, and I think it was Donovan, who, just saying, but where he puts his own hand on his throat, and it's such a and arms have been just deliciously available throughout the whole first part of the piece, and so just this kind of acknowledgement of flesh, of failing flesh, maybe, and that folding, that pressure, that awareness just feels like you're saying this very particular kind of metaphor, a choreographic metaphor, not just a performative one, of age or awareness or something.
Yes. Trying to think of how best to respond to that. Yeah, part of that is also, coming back to Risa Steinberg again. She's someone who will say to the dancers, you have to dance thicker in some of these spaces. And some of that thickness comes with maturity and comes with experience.
Yeah.
So how can you carve out space? How can you hold space? How can you be aware of not only what touch is and that feeling and that sensation you feel when someone touches you, but also the space once their hand or body has left yours. How can you keep an awareness around that lingering feeling, sensation, memory in the way that you're moving or holding space?
Yeah, I'm kind of going off on another tangent now, because I think about all of that humanity in front of and on top of this glistening, flickering forest of light and change and aging, and then unfolding and becoming, and that relationship that you built with James was so striking in its dynamic, in its movement, and even now I'm thinking, as we were all sitting there watching. It was a gala night, so there was a lot of red clothing. I don't know who did the. Okay, anyway, I didn't get the memo, but beautiful, people chatting, and then I just started hearing like little kids like laughing, and you realize like the sound score was also adding to all of this. So there's just this whole becoming and aging that just was on so many levels, visually as well. That was just striking, beautifully done. Yeah.
As not a spoiler, but as a little fun secret, if you are coming to the show, if you sit in the theater a little early, you'll see a really interesting transition happen of the backdrop in the space that people don't know. If you walk into the room 5 minutes before the show, you have no idea what has happened. But there's a special thing that happens if you're in the room early.
Is there a face?
There's a face.
Oh, I knew it.
There's a
I knew
whole
it.
body.
Oh,
too.
really?
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. That was in my notes, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it disappears.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite moment?
I mean, I'm happy to say I have several.
Okay.
I think one of my favorite moments is kind of complex in a way because of all of the things that it is for me. Internally, the names, people who may not be like dance folks and spent time in the studio with dancers, there's always every section has some random name to it. This section we call Will Burst because it's this dancer, Will, who gives us a cue that has us bursting through space. Part of it is when Will joined the company. Will is one of our newer company members. He was my student at USC at the Gloria Kaufman School.
Oh my
Makes me
gosh.
happy,
Wow.
proud teacher. But when Will joined the cast, he's someone that holds so much light and shares that light. That I made a section as soon as he joined the process, and it's part of it, I guess, is maybe this beautiful thing of seeing someone who is more than more than half my age, seeing the joy that he possesses and this love that he just is so open with, that is really special to me. I always say that he is my SUN. He's like my son.
Does he know this?
Yeah. Everybody knows. They know I dote on him too much. I love him, but it's a thing. I have to hold it back, Kyle. You love him too much. But along with that, there's a lot that's happening in that moment. There's a lot of purposeful touch that's happening with everyone except for me and for William. And I purposefully built moments in the dance because of the vastness of the Armory where things are happening in the very back of the space in the same way that in most cases those things would be at the front of the space. So in these moments where everyone is kind of holding each other and acknowledging each other, I'm not a part of that. And William is also just exploring and being open and being that son that he can be. Yeah, that's some of my favorite moments. I have a gaggle of them. Some of them have to do with just some of the transitions and people's entrances in the work. Donovan Reed, who Bebe was speaking about before, Donovan's danced with me since 2018, I believe it is. There's an entrance that they made that I made specifically for them to kind of just arrive. And it was great to see what both James and Dan Scully, my lighting designer, what they could do to really kind of make that come to life. And it's a really beautiful shift of space. And there's several of those kind of shifts that I'm really proud of that we have in the work. Having an opportunity to create a work here at the Armory, for me, was taking that opportunity to actually explore isolation all the more. I feel as if, and I felt as if, it's easier to see and acknowledge kind of the sense of aloneness in a bigger space. So I loved all of the opportunities that we had to do that in this work, and a lot of those tend to be some of my favorites.
Yeah, and you do that so beautifully, and sometimes it's you. Ooh. I'm sorry, but it's true. Of a solo figure, and you're not alone. Either the dancers have come or have gone, but you're never alone because the space is so alive visually and audibly, but you're never alone. And so a solo figure inside of this forest, inside of these layered rocks or this face, is so eloquent. A message, I guess. I don't know. I'm realizing I'm kind of going to the overstory bit.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, which
Richard Powers' Overstory. It's really beautiful.
And okay, just to say, I just finished it, but I started it over a year ago, and then I put it down for months, and then I just like, let me bring, not just because of you, but let me just bring it back, and I cried several times, and the whole poignancy, it's not poignant, the whole humanity, the whole cosmology, the whole environmental magic of these trees, and our deep indebtedness and blindness to that was so huge. And so the translation of that, my own reference to the book, but also just the visuals and this figure, the solo figure, is really, really powerful. My friend Caroline, right there, we were talking before the show last night, and we were talking about trees, we often do, and how, and what did you say? You said, truth is, we should be moved. We should be moved by this. And so I feel that you were moved, and along with many other things going on, but just that our place in the world and our making of our place in the world and what has happened and our centuries and our human stuff. But here we are in a moment of something without words and just magic and visuals and aliveness that is, yes, truth is we should be moved. And so we are. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you both. That maybe also leads me to curiosities about you and your work and you living in the forest and thinking about the Overstory. And I'm curious for you how all of this kind of makes its way into Indifferent Forest, and how you are kind of processing early iterations of that work, where that's going now, how for you maybe, if any way, that work is in conversation with Dear Lord, Make Me Beautiful.
Wow, yeah. It will be in conversation with it because, I don't know, I'm one of those who just like, as you kind of go through time, it's like I'm going to just grab that part and this. Not literally, but I mean, we're affected by these things. I'm a Brooklynite, grew up in Red Hook. Yeah. And find myself for the last year or so living on Vashon Island, which is off of Seattle. And I live pretty much surrounded by Douglas fir trees that are hundreds of feet tall. I just don't know how tall they are. They have been there for quite a while, not forever, and probably not much more than a century, these particular trees. Every once in a while you see an older one, but they are indifferent, and they have a whole nother time span that we know about and we live with. So I feel choreographically interested in not the wonder of that, but like kind of the mess of that, and the indifference of ourselves as well, or the indifference of ourselves to stuff, like the pen that just fell. Oh, thank you. But just the rub of the natural, and then everything else that we carry with us and live with. So I don't know, moving to that piece, and I have to say that Indifferent Forest started because you invited me to make a work for Dance Space as a platform. What was the name of it? What did you call it?
A Delicate Ritual.
A Delicate Ritual.
Yes. So A Delicate Ritual was what they call a platform at Dance Space Project, which was a series of performances, conversations, and even some writing. You can buy the catalog; it's available. Where I paired together different artists to share several performances and engage in conversation around ideas of ritual and history and humanity and nature and aging
And love.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I guess it was last September or so, a year ago, and you invited us to do this, and it's like, okay, so where are we? What's involved? Living in the forest seemed appropriate because that had just started at that time, and I really love the idea of kind of carrying all the things that you run into over the course of a year into a piece, including plastic tables and things you maybe want to throw at people, and they're in the piece. So, and now we have a chance to premiere it, and in May at Harlem Stage. Please come. And so, just to see what else comes our way, as well as kind of refining it. And choreographically, I'm happy to be at the stage of my dance-making life where I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't really worry about that too much, of just something will happen and hope for the best, and then, move on. That's it. Yeah.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
I'm curious. Was there a point in your life where that something switched for you to be in that headspace?
That's what aging does, for one. And I think, at a certain point when I don't need to tour a work, and I don't need to go to APAP. There's a yearly, heads are nodding, so there's a booking conference about dance. And I'm just like, I don't think so. I don't need to. So fairly recent, but I didn't expect necessarily to arrive at a point where in making dances where it's like, it's not about like where you take it or whatever. It's like, what am I going to do with this idea now? And no, I'll do something else with that idea, and then no, I won't bother with that idea. So just that variedness feels new, and kind of what comes with aging in this, I think.
Well, just as someone who admires you, looks up to you, all of the things, I'm also maybe curious for my own self. I don't want to say the word success, but, and I don't know what the word is, right? Because I don't think it's necessarily comfort, but what is the place, I guess, that you want to get to with a work? It doesn't have to be the premiere. It could be in a rehearsal or whatever. But where's the point where, because even the word satisfy can feel not like the right word, right? Because nobody wants to be satisfactory. But what is, I don't know what maybe you all know what the right word is I'm trying to get to, right? It's not about when does something feel successful. It's not about when does it feel comfortable, because comfortable is, you don't want to always feel comfortable. But where's that? Oh, thank you all. Thank you.
There are a couple of ones, but it's full, yeah.
All right, we can be
Yeah.
on the same team when we play Taboo. I appreciate that. When does it feel fulfilled?
Well, but it's funny. It's not the work that does that, because I think it's a recognition of the series, the practice that you've been going through for years and years now. And you maybe know this feeling, although you're now you're in your own forest, and you're in this really delicious place with a new work. But there's always like, that thing we did that one day, that's still kind of lodged in there. It'll get unpacked at a certain point. So I really feel that it's our practice over time, rather than the product of the pieces themselves, that really are what carries us through. And so, and in a way, that never ends. I mean, it's not so much there's always the next piece, but there's always the practice, the creative practice of you're shifting and you're looking at the alignment of walls and images, and like, what if but the thing, and maybe, and so we go on.
But do you feel like that same curious mind is present in the same way in the work that you yourself are dancing in your repertory, and different than the works that you take yourself out of? Because I think even in the last 10 years, there are works that you've made that you're in, like we see you on stage. Then there's some works where you're in but we don't see you. But what is that for you? And is that same kind of curious mind around when something feels fulfilled and when it feels finite? Maybe it never feels finite because we're performing art, a live performance. But what is that for you, I guess?
Wasn't this supposed to be about you? This whole,
well, this is
kind of, I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
okay.
conversation.
All
Yeah,
right, conversation.
yeah. Thanks,
Right,
Vernon.
okay.
Yeah.
But
I'll turn it back to me after this. I'll
Okay,
do like
okay.
Tyra Banks and make the answer about me. Yeah.
I love being out of a work. I love the view. I love the view of watching it and kind of seeing, like, is it coming closer? I mean, you see the relationship between people and the space. You see the time. You see the I mean, we really are working through time. So you go from the beginning to the end or to the middle, and you can kind of watch it happen in the process of making. And I don't know, not that long ago, I kind of went like, okay, Tether, I think, 2018. I went, okay, yeah, I think I'm in it. And it was, it's a very particular sense of, I love movement. I love the making of this. But now I have to figure out, like, whoa, what else am I finding? What's the space between us? What's the carving of that, the letting it go through time? All of those delicious making bits are they taste differently from the inside. I like both. I'm fine with both. I'm more fine on the outside, actually, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel there is this this statement of "I don't know" feels different when you're in your own work versus when you're watching your work and have to answer that question or say that out loud to your collaborators. It feels different. The weight feels different. The responsibility feels different. And I don't know what the difference is necessarily because the responsibility is still heavily on you as the maker or the person whose name is on the thing. But it's different somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of this is these things that, now that we've done this work in front of an audience, now it's trying to make the space to think about how does it feel, how did it taste, all of those things. What is the aftertaste? But it's a curious thing being in the work at this point because I haven't been in my work in this way for a very long time. So it's a lot. It's like a simmer in a way. And trying to recall things and trying to figure out if it's okay that I don't really know what happened on stage last night. I don't fully know. And is that okay? I think that's some of the questions I'm asking myself.
It's okay. Yeah, it all worked. It's good.
Thanks.
I have to just do a little bit of history just because there is.
Yes.
And I think it was 2009. I was teaching a repertory class at the Bates Dance Festival up in Lewiston, Maine. And Kyle was in a repertory piece, and you were really quiet and incredibly airborne. You were listening, and then and so you were taking in information, all of that, but then you whoa. And I'm not a jumper. I'm not. But it's not that you jump, but you had such a responsive immediacy that was just beautiful. And so you're in the piece, and then we looked at the work that you were making, which you say it's the beginning, the radio show. That was, it was exquisite. It was just a vocabulary and a timing and a way of between people and bodies and who were bent on purpose, bent purposefully, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Bent on purpose. Anyway, but it was so I don't know. Just your interest in being in and listening to a process, as well as being in and making your own, and that I was really glad to be around for that rub.
Well, I was in this space with one of my idols, so like whatever she's doing, I just want to be in the room.
Oh. Wow.
That's what that was. Those of you that may not know, the radio show is a work that it premiered in 2010, first in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but then in New York at Dance Space Project at St. Mark's Church. And it was a work that was looking at my father, who had an early onset of dementia and aphasia, and the only urban radio station that we had in Pittsburgh that was taken off the air. So looking out of a loss of a voice for our community, but also for my family and for my father. So, yeah, we haven't done that work. We toured it for 4 years, which is a long time, especially in these days. But yeah, sometimes people want to put that back in their bodies, but I don't know if we will do that.
Well,
yeah, maybe sometime. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Should we open it up for some questions? Tavia, do you have a question for us? Yeah, thanks. So yMusic is an ensemble who, for years, used to commission composers to make works for them that they would then play and record on their albums. So their first maybe 4 albums or so, you'll hear music by Nico Muhly, Ryan Lott of Sun Lux, several different composers in the mix. And I love their sound. I love the sense of a nice chamber, but also with a little bit of brass in there. And just I was curious about that while exploring this work. I'd also spent a lot of time thinking about Nicholas Britell, who a lot of people think about him with the TV show Succession. But if you've seen any of the Barry Jenkins films, Nicholas did the music for those, and the arrangements are somewhat similar. This idea of strings with a little bit of brass in there. And so I came to the folks at yMusic partially through Ryan Lott's suggestion because he had worked with them. And Ryan had created a new score for me for the Royal Ballet in London a couple of years back. And I was really drawn to just their kind of curiosity around working with a dance choreographer. And so we spent a fair amount of time just kind of connecting back and forth. I would share material with them, and they would share material with me in their kind of early stages. I sent them what you would call my project narrative, which is basically me just trying to write and surmise what I'm hoping to do with the work. Basically, we've all had science class, so my hypothesis of what I think I'm going to make, and that's what I share with yMusic. And then and also maybe I think I probably sent them some films. I sent them references like the Overstory with Richard Powers, things for them to kind of think about and consider as they work together. But being that they're a touring ensemble that lives on different coasts, some of them live in Los Angeles, some in New York, they were writing on tour, which feels so cool. It feels like what the pop stars do. So it was nice to kind of connect with them in that way and know that we only had these certain pockets where they could respond to add something, change something, make something brand new. But that was a big part of the process, I think. It wasn't until, I'd say probably right before Thanksgiving, that we got to work with them in the studio, and they were in rehearsal with us, which is a whole other layer, because it's one thing to hear music and dance to it, but it's another thing to really be able to hear the instrumentation and say, okay, I want you to be you're going to be the double bass clarinet, you're going to be the cello, you're going to be the French horn, you're going to be the piccolo. Like all of that comes when you hear the sounds in a more kind of rounded way, which we could only do when we have them in the space with us. Oh, I'd love to. So the Jacob's Pillow, where I'm currently a board member, the wonderful festival in Beckett, Massachusetts. They have a new theater that will open this summer. They just announced the first season. A dear friend of mine and someone who has performed at the Armory, Shamel Pitts, a recent MacArthur winner, he's performing this summer, so I recommend going to see my brother from another mother. But I'm not currently on the docket, but it'd be great to be able to perform, at least have a work of mine performed in the new Duke Theater. Hopefully that's in the works. We'll see. Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question. Everybody heard the question? I will summarize a bit as so the question is basically how did I work with all of the different collaborators in the different ways that I did? How did it start? How did we get from point A to point B with each of the individual kind of mediums that we're working with? And then more specifically, how did the experience with yMusic work over time with them as an ensemble? So in some ways, I guess you could say I started this work working or meeting with Michael Lonergan, who's one of the producers here at the Armory, to just talk about things that I was interested in. And then I left one of those meetings and started writing my hypothesis or my narrative. And then I held myself to that for some time. Stephanie Terasaki, who's one of the lead artists in the work, when you leave the building, if you look outside on the left, you'll see an image of Stephanie Terasaki and Donovan Reed in an embrace from the show. But Stephanie was assisting me at the Royal Ballet while we were working on a new work together. And she and I just got in the studio and we just started talking a little bit. She was talking to me about her fears in this world today. And I was just listening to that. And from listening to her, I made what we call the 13-minute phrase because it's a 13-minute phrase.
Wow.
And then I made the 6-minute phrase, which is a 6-minute phrase of material. So a long sequence of material that lasts for 13 minutes or lasts for 6 minutes. And then I made several other short phrases, all within maybe just a couple days. And Stephanie she's remarkable in all the ways. She's one of my, if not my favorite human being. But part of her kind of remarkable talent is that she can learn all of my movements in the most finite detail and actually enjoys doing it. Not all dancers would love to learn where your pinky finger is. And she loves teaching that material to others. So she spent time learning all of that material. And then several months later, when we first started kind of developing a larger ensemble of dancers, she started teaching those phrases to the dancers. From there, over time, we would get to a place where I would maybe say to 4 or 5 senior dancers, okay, I want you to take these 2 sequences and I wish I could remember what the prompts were at this point because it was from 2 years ago, but move them through space and just see what happened. And I was really particular with who I was giving that assignment to. And then I would say there's another section in the dance that's called the 6-minute support group because it's 4 dancers taking the 6-minute phrase with the prompt of how can you approach it with ideas of supporting one another and growing. So that is the 6-minute support group that you'll see in the piece. But getting to, I guess, the music part of it all the more, I would send videos of some of those phrases and some of that material. And then some of their music I would either hear ahead of time or like I'd go back and listen to something that was of the world that I was hoping to have from their catalog and then start generating with that. And that played a part. I also sent yMusic a playlist of things that we were playing in the studio. I was using a lot of Julius Eastman because it's pretty minimal in a way, and it develops over a long period of time. So it gave us the space to not be super influenced by any instrumentation from another composer. Dan Scully, who's my lighting designer on the work, we've worked together for the past 20 years. We started working together in 2004. Dan had all of the things, the narrative, the videos. He had been working with me on several other projects at the same time. Probably wasn't happy about doing 5 different dances with me in 1 year, but so we were in conversation and I was sending him videos throughout the process. James and Dan, I think, had to work together a fair amount to kind of really figure out how lighting design can play with projection, because they're in some ways the complete opposite. You need darkness to have the projection show well. So in this work, it was for Dan, I think it was a real lesson in kind of like humility, right? How can he just serve as a supporting role? There is a lot of lighting design in the work, but part of the success, if it is that, is the subtlety in how he's actually blending himself with the projections at times. I probably have time for maybe 2 more questions, and I'll try and be quicker with my answers. Carol, bring it. Yeah. Yes. Well, it's several pieces in strips. Several pieces in strips. Yes. The floor that you will see, the staging, is actually from. If any of you all were here at the Armory for Merce Cunningham's the Merce Cunningham Company's final performance, it is the same floor. So it's a real honor to be able to move and hold space in that way.
Was it curved?
Not when they used
okay.
it. No, just when we're using it. You have a question? Right. The question is, how did we know how the work was going to finish? I think coming back to this idea of writing a hypothesis in the science kind of way, it is a lot of experimentation to get to the final place, and it is the conversation. And for me, it's also talking a lot of conversations with, I didn't also mention, but my rehearsal director, Jessica Tong, working with Jessica Tong and with Risa Steinberg and with the dancers, and spending a fair amount of time reading a variety of books on various subject matters that kind of find their way to make sense of the work. I don't know if everyone's read the book Trust, one it was 4 years ago. That also, definitely not a spoiler to say, because I'm not going to say what happens, but the ending, some of the endings of some of the stories that you're hearing and the way that you're hearing them also play a role for me in how I'm thinking about being delicate, being fragile, fragile's a tricky word, but delicate. I think delicate. I'll just stick with delicate. But it's also that conversation and the space to have this technical residency that helped us define the ending, because I wasn't happy with the last 20 minutes or so of a previous kind of projection and lighting world. And then once I expressed that and we had time to explore what else we could do, that then got us to make an ending in a way. So the last two sections didn't really exist until not that long ago. And even some of the prompts. I think some of it's also, it's like how am I growing? How am I changing? Just for one more little small tidbit as we finish, there is one movement exploration that you'll see in the work. I won't say, it's towards the latter half of the work, where if you've watched the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, there's this character Groot. I am Groot. He is like a tree that just can keep growing. Like you chop it, it's gonna keep growing and changing. Maybe he'll be a little baby and it'll keep growing. There's a prompt that I gave the dancers to kind of like, what happens if you keep growing and finding a new limb? Like, we are forever changing. How can we own that? How can we explore that? How can we share that? How can we, hopefully with holding empathy and experiencing empathy, how can we open our minds and hearts to change and to be, how can we be, not responsible, how can we be responsible for change, nurturing towards change, and empowered by change. So that's a lot of what all of that is, right? So it's like in the middle of the pathway, how can you change the pathway, find something new to explore and grow from? Yeah. You're welcome.
That last little bit, of you just moving there, it's so Kyle to me, and the passage through your body of the impulse and the redirection and the where's it going to emerge next is so particular to you, and I love knowing that they are. It's sort of like how you have coaxed or directed or challenged them to find their own pathways, and it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, friend.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bebe.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Bebe. We have two wonderful artists on stage tonight, and also, as you've learned, two wonderful communicators of the power of art. And so, thank you all for coming. For those of you who've seen the show, come again. Bring your friends. And for those of you who haven't seen Dear Lord, Make Me Beautiful, really, there's no spoiler possible. You really just see it, So anything, when you walk in, it's just such a wow, and then it takes you through to the end. So again, have a good evening. Thanks for joining us at the Artist Talk, and once more, thanks again to Kyle Abraham and Bebe Miller.